my name is Emily McHugh, International Trade Consultant at Indian River State College with the SBDC. And today we're going to talk about developing an export marketing plan and what is involved as you consider expanding your global presence and growing your business internationally. So what we have here are some steps, if you will, to success in international trade and expansion, getting started, market research. We're just going to walk through a few of these to give you a bit of an overview of what's involved in this process. Getting started. Who can export? You may be asking, do I have to be a big company? Do I have to be some, major enterprise in order to export? And the reality is anyone can export, any size company. It's just whether you have the opportunity and the resources to go forward, you can export. So you want to ask yourself some of these questions like, do I need an export license? It depends. It depends on what you're exporting, where you're exporting to, and what it is you're exporting. So those are some of the considerations. But these are questions you ask, and you start with this, but the answer is anybody can export. And that's the whole objective of this stage of the assessment, is to know what is involved, to do the necessary marketing research to make the appropriate market entry, so you can determine which countries are best and which markets are most suited for your product or service. So at this point, we want to do some market research in order to confirm the opportunities that are available internationally, to determine what's going on with your competitors, to understand what's happening in the industry, what are the trends, so that we can make a proper assessment of your total opportunity and that you can make the most informed decisions. So we have a research toolkit which will include various databases and so forth that we will access in order to determine what the true opportunity is, what the trade flows look like, what are the tariffs involved, so that you know a holistic understanding of the market intelligence and the lay of the land that way. Once we get those basic understanding of what's available to us, then we're going to consider which markets we want to enter, which countries specifically, as we determine the market entry strategy to go forward in selecting the best suited markets. So here you will notice that we determine whether it's going to be indirect exporting strategy or a direct exporting. And by that we mean indirect exporting is when you interact maybe with a distributor or a third-party entity that will represent you in that country. Or direct exporting, you might want to set up a sales office directly in the country that you're going to. And that might be for companies that maybe are a little larger or who do have the resources to maintain that. But those are some of the considerations you make. Or you might want to do both, depending on the business that you are in particular. Another major consideration is our legal aspects of exporting and global trade. And there are many, and some of them we'll just share with you today. Pay now or pay later. What type of trade terms will you have with your customers? Will it be terms that they'll pay you in 30 days, 60 days after shipment, or do they have to do cash on delivery or pay in advance? These are some of the considerations that you will want to review. It may be necessary to engage the assistance of an international trade attorney, depending on what you're involved in, but not always. It depends on the types of contracts you might be looking at and what are the technicalities involved. So those are some of the issues you'd want to consider, as well as the types of legal systems, civil law, common law, and so forth around the world, as legal systems do vary by country, as you can see by this map. And you will want to be a little familiar with world geography so you can see what's going on, where things differ, and to have that clear understanding of comparing the different countries. Knowing before you go that certain countries in Europe, for example, have a civil law system, France, Germany, and so forth. The common law system is more the Anglo countries, England, Australia, US, India, Canada, and based on judicial opinions and precedents. Then we have customary law that takes place in certain parts of the world, like certain indigenous communities in Australia. Then religious law for example, Islamic law, Christian canon law, observed in certain parts of the world. So having this understanding allows you to prepare for the particular markets. Another legal consideration is intellectual property protection. Your copyrights, your patents, and your trade secrets. Are they being respected in the particular countries to which you are seeking to enter, and what type of protection you will need for your intellectual property? And we have wonderful resources that can assist. We have the Legal Resource Center, ELON, the Export Legal Assistance Network that provides actually no charge consultation for your first initial legal consultation, which is available to companies seeking beginning their export practice. So as you can see, it's located in many cities throughout the country, throughout the U.S., and multiple attorneys available to provide this assistance. In addition to some of these considerations, we also have compliance. Many organizations involved in trade compliance requirements based on the type of exports that you have, whether it's agricultural, whether it's some form of firearm or what have you, may be subject to certain requirements before they can be exported. Also, the countries that you're exporting to, do they have embargoes? Are there trade embargoes in place or sanctions that you have to be aware of so that you do not illegally ship somewhere and incur issues for your company that you could have avoided? So those are some of the things that we review with you. Also, we assess what are the harmonized tariff codes for your product or service. That allows us to determine what are the trade flows, how in demand is that product internationally, just by assessing that number, which each product that is shipped has a harmonized tariff code that is recognized universally or internationally by each country. And it does two things. One, it allows you to know what's the demand for your product and service. We can determine based on that number which countries it's exported to or imported from. And number two, what are the tariffs that will be imposed on your product when it arrives in a particular country. This is extremely important because it allows you to determine the landed duty paid cost, so the total landed cost, so that your client to whom you're shipping will be able to calculate what it will truly cost them to receive your product and service. So once you have the price of the goods, then you have to add the tariffs and the taxes and sales taxes and all of those things, transportation costs, etc. So when it arrives, they know what they can then sell it for and if your product will be competitive in that market. So this is an extremely important part of the assessment, to know the tariffs based on your HS harmonized codes. Then another consideration is transportation. How will you ship your goods? What are the methods of transportation you will use that's most appropriate? Air, sea, rail, trucking, and so on. The pricing, the different routes, the documentation involved, all very important, whether you will need to work with a freight forwarder or a customs broker in order to determine the best way to ship your goods to the particular destination by a certain time, because everything is within a specific time frame. And in determining how you'll be paid for your shipment, you may want to consider credit insurance, which allows you to be guaranteed payment for your shipment if you have that insurance in place. And we work with our partner entities such as the Export-Import Bank that provides credit insurance to clients based on certain criteria, which allows you to cover political risk, the risk of non-payment, or any sudden regulatory changes which may take place in a country that might impact your ability to receive payment. So this is also an important aspect of your trade considerations going forward. We have general average insurance. You see this photo here of a container ship with the containers capsizing. Sometimes that can happen and you want to cover that potentiality. And also, if a container ship is too full and they may have to put certain containers overboard, you want to have your goods and services covered by having the appropriate transport insurance and marine insurance along with your shipment. Then we're going to talk about, payment and financing. Very important as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about culture, the cultural component of this, which for me, I think is one of the most important, because you can have all the other things in place, but if you don't pay attention to what the mores of or doing business in a particular market, it could really make the rest of your interaction most difficult. For example, if you go to China or Asia, knowing how to hand out your business card with two hands, with a business card facing the person who's receiving it, and realizing that that interaction is a critical part of laying a successful foundation for your future relationship. Knowing that people want to get to know you in order to trust you before they do business with you. So they might not talk business for the whole day. They just want to talk about your family or what you like or sports as a way to get to know you personally. And therefore, you need to be patient and understand that this is how things are done, and just enjoy the process and show respect. That's really the key word when it comes to culture. Do you respect the nationality, the country you're doing business with? Do you understand what is important to them? And by so doing, you elevate the opportunity for them to want to do business with you. And so these are some of the real key steps to consider why it's so important to get to know the countries that you're dealing with, the behavioral patterns, the values, the assumptions, and not to automatically assume just because what you're accustomed to in one country is how it automatically needs to be in another place. That is so paramount. And these are some of the highlights that we do. We provide culture guides so you get some insights into what is going on as part of your export marketing plan.